They. Have you ever heard the story of a city that burned to the ground and then rose from the ashes, stronger than ever before? Today, we're rediving deep into one of the most infamous disasters in American history, the Great Chicago Fire of 1871. It's a tale of chaos, destruction, and ultimately, incredible rebirth. So grab a seat, because this story is more than just history. It's a lesson in resilience. Picture this. It's the early 1870s. Chicago is booming. It's the fastest growing city in the world, a bustling hub of commerce and industry connecting the East and the West. The population is exploding. Buildings are shooting up everywhere, and the future looks incredibly bright. But there was a hidden danger lurking beneath this prosperous surface. Most of the city, from its grand buildings to its humble homes and even the sidewalks, was built almost entirely of wood. Chicago was essentially a tinderbox, just waiting for a spark. And that summer of 1871 was unusually dry. From July to October, barely any rain fell. The wooden structures became bone-dry. To make matters worse, a strong, dry wind constantly blew in from the southwest. The conditions were perfect for a catastrophe. People were on edge. Small fires had been breaking out frequently, but the city's firefighters, though dedicated, were exhausted and their equipment was worn down. The stage was set for a disaster of epic proportions. Game the night of Sunday. It's October 8th, 1871. The fire is said to have started around 9 p.m. in a small barn behind the home of Patrick and Catherine O'Leary at 137 DeKoven Street. Now, you've probably heard the most famous legend, that Mrs. O'Leary's cow kicked over a lantern while being milked, and that's what started it all. It's a simple, catchy story that has stuck around for over 150 years. But is it true? Well, not really. Catherine O'Leary herself swore that she was in bed when the fire started. She was officially cleared of all blame during the initial investigation. In fact, the reporter who first published the cow story later admitted he completely made it up for a more colorful article. So, what really started the fire? The truth is, we'll never know for sure. Some historians think a neighbor might have accidentally started it. Others suggest it could have been careless smokers, or even a stray spark from a chimney. The mystery of its origin only adds to the legend. Regardless of how it started, what happened next was terrifyingly fast. That strong southwesterly wind I mentioned. It picked up the embers from the O'Leary barn and hurled them across the neighborhood. The fire began to leap from one wooden building to the next, with incredible speed. At first, there was a critical delay in the response. A watchman in the courthouse tower spotted the blaze, but mistakenly gave the wrong location to the fire department. By the time the already exhausted firefighters arrived at the correct spot, the fire had grown into an uncontrollable monster. The firefighters fought with everything they had, but it was a losing battle. The wind was so fierce it created what's called a firestorm, with temperatures reaching up to 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. It was hot enough to melt iron. The fire generated its own wind. A terrifying fire whirled like a tornado of flames that tore through the city, consuming everything in its path. People fled for their lives with only the clothes on their backs. The air was thick with smoke and ash, and the roar of the flames was deafening. The fire spread north and east, jumping the Chicago River not once, but twice a feat that was thought to be impossible. It devoured the city's business district, known as the Loop. Banks, hotels, theaters, newspaper offices, and the city's grandest buildings were all turned to rubble. The courthouse, which was supposed to be fireproof, was completely gutted. Its massive bell, which had been ringing to warn the citizens, finally fell silent and crashed through the burning floors. Panic gripped the city. The streets were a chaotic scene of people trying to escape. Some sought refuge in the open spaces of Lincoln Park, while thousands of others waded into the cold waters of Lake Michigan to escape the intense heat. For 2 full days, the fire raged on. It seemed like nothing could stop it. The city that was once a symbol of American progress was being erased before its very eyes. Finally, on the morning of Tuesday, October 10th, the fire began to die down. What stopped it? It wasn't the firefighters, too. The fire had simply run out of things to burn in its path, and mercifully, the winds died down and a light rain began to fall. The Great Chicago Fire was over. When the smoke cleared, the devastation was almost unimaginable. An area of over 3 square miles in the heart of the city was completely flattened. Around 17,500 buildings were destroyed. Roughly 100,000 people, the third of the city's population, were left homeless. The official death toll was about 300, but many historians believe the actual number was much higher, as many victims were likely incinerated without a trace. The total property damage was estimated at $200 million, which in today's money would be billions. The city was in ruins. It looked like the end of Chicago. But what happened next is the most incredible part of this story. The spirit of the city and its people was not broken. Even as the embers were still smoldering, the rebuilding began. The news of the fire spread across the country and the world, and aid poured in. Money, food, and supplies arrived from all over. But more important than the outside help was the city's own determination. Chicagoans adopted the motto, "I will They weren't just going to rebuild, they were going to build back better, stronger, and safer. Architects, engineers, and laborers flocked to the city, drawn by the unique opportunity to design a modern metropolis from scratch. The new Chicago that rose from the ashes was a marvel of innovation. Instead of wood, they used steel, stone, and terracotta. This tragedy paved the way for a revolution in architecture. The world's first skyscrapers were built right there in Chicago, pioneering new construction techniques with steel frame skeletons that allowed buildings to soar to new heights. Visionary architects like Louis Sullivan and Daniel Burnham led the charge, creating a new style of architecture that would define skylines around the globe. Within a few years, Chicago was not only back on its feet, but it was more prosperous and dynamic than ever before. By 1893, just 22 years after the fire, Chicago hosted the World's Columbian Exposition, a massive World's Fair that showcased its incredible recovery and its status as a leading global city. It was a stunning testament to the city's resilience. The Great Chicago Fire of 1871 is a powerful story about how a city can face its darkest hour and emerge into a brighter future. It reminds us that destruction can sometimes clear the way for innovation, and that the human spirit of determination is an incredible force for renewal. The modern city of Chicago, with its breathtaking skyline, stands today as a monument to the people who refused to give up and rebuilt their home from the ashes. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey back in time. If you found this story as fascinating as I do, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history. Let me know in the comments what historical event you'd like to see covered next. See you in the next video.